seven continents of the world: Antarctica, Australia, Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, South America. 7 billion people, different ethnic groups, diversity all over the world. This is still Atlantic Discourse. Yes, we are always discussing. We've still not left the country with the largest concentration of Black people in the world. That is Nigeria. A lot of you have challenged me in the past. Why Nigeria? I said, yes, Nigeria is the beacon of the Black world. One out of every four sub-Saharan African is a Nigerian. One out of every six Black people in the world is a Nigerian. So we cannot leave Nigeria alone for now. Nigeria is way, way behind schedule. In the 60s, when Nigeria got its independence, it was the hope of the Black world. It had economic parity, even better than the Chinas, the Malaysias, the Indonesias of this world. Everybody in Asia looked at Nigeria. Today, the story is not like that. We don't want it to remain that way. We want to change it. At Atlantic Discourse, we are very big on what the diasporan contingent can give back. We are very big on how the diasporan contingent can effect change in Nigeria. India has always been my parameter and yardstick. Why? Things Nigerians call obstacles, hurdles. India has used it to its advantage. That is the ethnic diversity, the religious diversity. India, as you know, is the most populous democracy in the world. They have overtaken China in population bracket. Despite the volatility in India, there's never been a military coup in the country of India. Indira Gandhi was assassinated. In sub-Saharan Africa, that would have been an impetus for a military coup. It did not take place. The son Rajiv Gandhi took over. He was equally assassinated, and the military did not take over. Today, even the top Western country, including the United States, where I'm domiciled, are supporting India to be a permanent representative in the United Nations, because India, even though it's allied with Russia, allied with the West, is playing a strategic role and is even used as a check for China in the same way. Why can't Nigeria be in that same focal point, considering the fact that we have the numbers? So today we have another erudite scholar, fantastic guy. We've been talking, is my friend, our brother, and you're going to love talking to him. We have today Adetuji Omotola. Adetuji Omotola, welcome to Atlanta Discuss.
Thank you very much for having me, Ade.
We are excited, and I'm sure our viewers are also excited. Now, like I said before, at Atlanta Discuss, we're very big on diaspora giving back to Nigeria. That's my topic today, Africa in the 21st century, and how Nigerians in diaspora can lead this development trajectory. Now, the guest we have is also big on this. He's done a lot of work on this. He's done in the past, he's doing currently, and in the future, he has a lot lined up. And I can bet you, man, this is not the last time you're going to see him on Atlanta Discuss. It's going to be regular. So Adetuji holds a master's degree in communications research from the University of Leicester, that's in England, and an LLB in law from Southbank University, London, and he's a graduate of sociology from the University of Lagos, our big school. Yeah, his professional qualifications include stockbroking, certificate in wine, Cape Wine. Yeah, he's a connoisseur, clearly from academia and certificate real estate insurance from UK, South Africa. You know, he's an alumnus of the Henley Business School Executive Speaker Program. Adetuji is also a Bloomberg Special Certified Financial Journalist. He holds a certificate of attendance in Mandarin from the Wits Language School. Most importantly, an African enthusiast dedicated to telling the African story across the continent on the area of topics dealing with economics, human rights, and current affairs of the African region. He has appeared on so many, but not limited to print media, you know, like Atlanta Discuss now is here, he's everywhere, and he's writing books, he's always on radio, he's adding value. So he is the right caption, erudite scholar, the man for the job, square peg in square hole. Adetuji Omotola, welcome to Atlanta Discuss.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I am very humbled.
Well, we're excited to have you too. Now, in our tradition, we don't waste time. We always go for the jugular, and you're natural in this, and I'm sure you will help us out. You know, how relevant is Nigeria in the world today compared to how Nigeria was 40, 50 years ago? I'll give you a little bit of background. In 1962, the Saudi royal family used to come to UCH for not just medical checkup, for treatment. You know, the almighty royal Saudi family, and that means that health-wise, Nigeria was parameter and a yardstick for measuring so much. We also know that a lot of our doctors went to the Middle East to help start major hospitals. I have uncles, I'm sure you have uncles too, that all went to make the Saudi dollars then. So how relevant is Nigeria in the world today? I'm talking economically, socially, politically, in all spheres. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you. That's a very important question, Ade. First of all, let me preface my remarks by stating that as we speak today, Nigeria is still the largest, or rather most populous country in Africa, with well over 200 million people. Nigeria constitutes the GDP of Nigeria in the West Africa region, constitutes more than 50% of the GDP of the entire West Africa, which includes Ghana, countries like Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, Benin, and so on. And also, Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa, over $400 billion. If you remember, on Sunday, April 6th, the former Statistician General of the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, Dr. Yemi Kale, declared Nigeria Africa's largest economy because we had not rebased our economy since 1990. So the economy did not take into account Nollywood. It didn't take into account the consolidation of banks based on Basel II in 2005. And it certainly did not take into account the GSM companies like MTN, your Glo, your Airtel, and so on, that had well over 200 million combined subscribers. So it is clear that from a size point of view, even Africa's richest man is Alhaji Aliko Dangote, who's just built the biggest refinery, one of the biggest refineries in the world in Ibeju-Lekki area. And that was commissioned a few weeks before the end of the President Buhari's administration. So it's clear that Nigeria, from numbers, Nigeria still remains a behemoth in Africa. In fact, in 2015, I had the distinction to join some Africans to go and speak about Africa's swing states in Lake Como, Italy. And those three countries were Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria. So Kenya in East Africa, and you had South Africa in Southern Africa, which is known as SADC, and then Nigeria in West Africa. But of course, that was in 2015. A lot of things have now happened since then. We all know that Nigeria's economy is largely based on oil receipts. About 75% of our revenue, which is in Forex, relies on oil, the export of oil. A single commodity drives our foreign reserves, and that has been depleted. We also know that Nigeria's population has been rising at about 3.5% every year. So in 2050, Nigeria's population will be 400 million. We're going to be about the third most populous nation in the world. And by 2100, we'll have almost 800 million Nigerians. So these are some of the challenges also. Huge population, high unemployment, increased inflation, and the fact that we hardly export or value add the products that we have in abundance. So whether it's agricultural products, in fact, you'll be interested to know that the cashew nuts that are exported from Nigeria have to first go into Vietnam for final processing for it to be able to come to you guys in the West. So you guys set a very high bar, and the Nigerian cashew manufacturers cannot meet the standard that you guys have set. So having said those things, Nigeria has a serious challenge, of course, mismanagement, wastage. If you recall, currently there's a big debate about the cars that each of our members of parliament, what you guys call congressmen, are going to be buying cars of $200,000 to be used by 469 people. So Nigeria's influence in Africa has waned. I think also because of the security problem that we've had with Boko Haram, a country that is battling with terrorists would find it difficult to be able to raise its profile economically and socially. Currently, it's very difficult as a Nigerian to be able to get a visa even to South Africa, whereas other countries like Kenya and Rwanda in the past few days, they've announced visa-free for any African nation. If you're from Ghana, Malawi, Togo, Zimbabwe, you can go to Rwanda and Kenya without a visa. Now, Nigeria, you'll expect that Nigeria will be also in that category. But what has Nigeria done? They've increased our visa fees. So a South African or somebody from Botswana that wants to go to Nigeria will have to pay about almost $400 to be able to go to Nigeria. Now, why would somebody pay $400 to go to Nigeria when they can go to Ghana or rather Rwanda or Kenya visa free? So these are some of the things that are really affecting Nigeria's influence. Also, there's another story that is not told. When you're talking about Nigeria, you must also talk about South Africa. Nigeria's decline has emboldened South Africa. The most important investor in Africa, in Nigeria, is South Africa. You know about MTN, MultiChoice that owns DSTV. There's Sanlam there. There's Old Mutual. So South Africa has continued because it has a lot of advantages in terms of its industry, diversified economy, from financial services to tourism to all areas, even in mining. They've been able to take our lunch off the table. And South Africa continues to deepen its influence on a global stage. If you remember during COVID, the President Ramaphosa played a major role. And even recently, they held the BRICS Summit. And just 2 days ago, they just completed the AGOA Summit, the Africa Growth Opportunity Act. So while Nigeria has been sleeping and our politicians have been fighting, it's my turn, it's your turn, it's our turn, South Africa has been driving the agenda of economic prosperity and influence, especially with the BRICS agenda.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah. But you see, the thing is, at Atlantic Discourse, it's always a discussion. So you're not going to be the only one on the spot. We have an editorial staff that will look at all these things. So we have an opinion too. And from all you've said, we agree. It makes a lot of sense. Nigeria has not, I mean, South Africa was a country that really looked up to Nigeria in their fight for independence, especially funding. A lot of their leaders today came to Nigeria for education, UI, IFE, and UNILAG, so. And what touched me most in what you said is the AGOA, Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. I think Ghana and South Africa are operating phase 2 or phase 3 of that act now. We have not even scratched the surface. I know because I'm involved in people that try to do business between North America and Nigeria. And things go better when you're dealing with Ghana, South Africa, and even Senegal in recent times than with Nigeria. So I understand, but let me do a follow-up for you. This problem, it's partly leadership and followership, right? But you are big on diaspora involvement in bringing Nigeria to where it rightly belongs in the Community of Nations. It's clear from what you said that you know what you're talking about. Do you have a template for how the diaspora contingent can come in and rejuvenate everything, recalibrate the system, and put Nigeria where it belongs?
Absolutely. Look, first of all, I must commend you guys in the States. You seem to be the most successful per capita when they talk about Nigerians outside Nigeria. Yes,
we're asking what they voted for now before we remit.
Not only in terms of remittances, Ade, but also in terms of the statistics that surrounds your existence in the US. I mean, in terms of education, about 61% or more have a first degree. The average median, I think the average for foreigners is about 31%. You have 54% of Nigerians, or rather $54,000 a year is the median income for Nigerians who are, professionals, compared to about 31% for other foreigners. And not only that, you have a Nigerian sitting in the US cabinet for the first time in the history of America since 1776. We have our own young brother who is sitting there, Wale Adeomo. And I say that, God forbid, if anything happens to Mrs. Yellen, then Wale might just pop up as the US Treasury Secretary. But we're not praying for Madam Yellen to have a fever or anything. So the reality is that the US diaspora first comes to mind, whether it's in American football, whether it's in basketball, Giannis Antetokounmpo, MVP for 3 years in a row. Remember, we used to have Akeem Olajuwon, and we have so many people, Chiwete Ejiofor in the film noir. There's so many Nigerians who have raised the bar in terms of success in America. But when you look at the stats of the remittances, first of all, I think in 2015, $25 billion remitted. The US alone remitted about $8 or $6 billion of that money, about a quarter. And if you look at the population of Nigerians in America, it's probably about less than 10% of the total, because you guys are not that many. It's just that you're doing the right things there. I mean, even the mayor of New York was so excited to be part of the Nigerian Independence Day this October 1st. And I saw that doctor that gave $1 million to his alma mater, University of Ibadan. So what I think we can do, the first thing that I will advise that diaspora does to uplift Nigeria and the wider Africa is to begin to link those remittances to projects, specific projects. Yes, I know that people will prefer to put money in their bank and maybe do projects on an individual basis. But if we pull the resources together, maybe have a global diaspora fund for health that goes into specifics. Let me give you an example. In Surulere, where I grew up, Surulere, Lagos, there are about 2 million people in Surulere, but there's only one general hospital with 30 beds for 2 million people. Now, that's a specific area where even people, health physicians in the US who have capacity can focus and say, how do we increase beds in Surulere at Randall General Hospital in Surulere? Secondly, when it comes to the economy, right now, what people are crying about, oh, there's no dollars, there's no dollars, there's no dollars. I think the diaspora can come into some kind of arrangement. I remember the central bank, I think a year ago, for every dollar you brought in, they'll give you 5 naira, as a boost. I think the diaspora can have a deal with Mr. Yemi Cardoso and say, you guys always struggle with dollars, but we've got dollars. We get earnings in dollars. How do we do a deal that for every dollar we send in, we get this incentive? Maybe it's a tax incentive, or I don't know, whatever incentive, or they give us land or something in exchange for the dollar. Because a country the size of Nigeria, because we are focused on importation, the dollar puts a lot of pressure on our local currency, and that affects everything we do. Also, as diasporans, it is important for us to create a cohort. You talked earlier before we started about creating a cross-border cohort. You are in the States, I'm in South Africa, but there's nothing we're doing together. There's nothing that binds us that, okay, every year, maybe for 3 days, we're going to meet somewhere and cross-harmonize what works in South Africa, what works in the US, that we can take to Nigeria. I mean, for example, in South Africa, we have 282 municipalities. You guys call them counties. We call them local governments in Nigeria. They call them boroughs in the UK. How can we strengthen the relationship between the counties and the local governments and the municipalities in South Africa and the boroughs in the UK? Because what you find is that there will be a Nigerian somewhere who is running a borough in the UK. There will probably be a Nigerian who is very involved with a municipality in South Africa. And there'll be Nigerians who are very involved at county level in the US. How can we cross-harmonize the solutions that we're providing in the West and South Africa and take it? I just gave you an example of Surulere, which has about 2 million people. And that's that's the same population as Botswana, Namibia, and Lesotho, respectively, with one general hospital. So there are many low-hanging fruits that diaspora can use to provide leadership on the issue of socioeconomic development. Another area that I've talked about extensively is, why is it that Nigerians, for example, in South Africa our poor cousins of our counterparts in the US and the UK and Germany. What are they doing there that we're not able to do? Because in the end, maybe what needs to happen is that you guys were in more advanced climes, $16 trillion economy, and we're in about $400 billion. Maybe you need to adopt us since we're your poor cousins. So by doing so, we can also adopt our brothers and sisters in Nigeria. So rather than going direct to say, oh, let me support Nigerians in Nigeria, which is the standard module, we could look at another country like South Africa, where there's a lot of challenges for Nigerians who are keen to actually leave to go to the West again. And we're saying we don't want Nigerians who have successfully managed to get to South Africa to also transport themselves to Germany or Canada. That secondary diaspora experience need not happen if we get support from you guys who are in the more advanced nations. Since you are our brothers, we shouldn't continue to lose another secondary brain drain, as it were, to the West. So those are some of the points that I think will help us in diaspora. And finally, I've said something. Any Nigerian that is anywhere outside Nigeria that wants to contest for office, wherever they are, we must support them. Because as they say in Yoruba, so if the tree is comfortable, then the bird will be comfortable. So Nigerians don't have to wait to get to Nigeria to go and contest. I remember what Barack Obama told us when he was leaving. He said, you can be on the board of the school, you can do whatever. Public service doesn't have to be elected office. You can just raise your hand up and be a school board of trustee. And I think that the more the Nigerians are able to do so, wherever they are, is going to build our success module, almost like what the Indian community is doing with the World Bank head and Kamala Harris and Rishi Sunak and even the First Minister of Scotland. We need those optics for Nigerians as well, because we have a global reputation that is slightly tarnished, in my view.
Fantastic. You've spoken like a scholar. You've spoken like a patriot. I'm not surprised. I'm sure our viewers are not. But, back to what you said, it is true that the most educated migrating bloc to the United States are the Nigerian contingent. There's no doubt about it. You go to Harvard today, Yale, Morehouse, Princeton, even here in Georgia, come to Houston, we're everywhere. We're not just there for the numbers, we are doing extraordinary things. And what I've observed here in most of our research is that individually we do very well, very, very well. The problem, I think, is always in the collective. And I think it's probably because of religious and ethnic issues. That was why I referred to India having an issue, because India, multi-diverse, multi-ethnic. Look at India, just like Nigeria was colonized by Britain, they didn't lose a sense of their culture and tradition. You see an Indian man still speaking Indian, still dressing Indian, moving still Indian. You mentioned Nollywood when you were talking about the economy. The Indian Bollywood is arguably the biggest in the world, possibly even bigger than Hollywood because they churn out movies all the time. But today you go to the UK, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, of England now, is Rishi Sunak, Indian origin. The mayor of London, I think, is Pakistani. When you go to Coventry, Birmingham, all those places, they have Pakistani, Indian, mayors and all that. So now, Nigeria and Pakistan, I think, has almost the same number of population similarity, maybe not in resources, but, maybe in coups and counter coups and all that. But they have been able to entrench themselves more in all the countries they are domiciled. For example, in the United States, the Jews have a focal point. They integrate very well. They have even influenced the American politics to suit Israel and everything Jewish. The Irish are doing the same thing. And lately, even the Haitians from Haiti, small country, they're even doing extraordinary things. So my question to you is that all these guys are doing it and all that. Can Nigeria produce leaders in the mold of Mandela? I know you're very fond of Mandela. Sankara, selfless people, Nkrumah, and go back to India again. I think, and this is my personal opinion, that whatever is helping India today is an offshoot of what Mahatma Gandhi, the foundation, So, yes, we had Zeke, Awolowo, two of our extraordinary founding fathers, but it does seem that there's really no trickle-down effect. So, can Nigeria produce leaders in the mold of Sankara, Nkrumah, and Mandela?
Yes, look, Nkrumah, Sankara, and Mandela are Africans. And if you
Mm,
look at their background, they were not necessarily born into a wealthy family. I mean,
mhm,
Nkrumah's father was actually not in the picture. And I think he got his first taste of inspiration from the training that he received, studying geology and, meeting the likes of Kweja Agre and them giving him that Pan-African credentials. And I think that if you look at history, I want you to cast your mind to greats like Herbert Macaulay, Adeniyi Jones, and Eric Moore, for example, the Nigerian National Democratic Party, the first political party that came into being. These were the guys that gave the colonialists a very difficult time. You remember the motion for independence in 1951 by Nauru.
and
You
our,
remember the troika of Bello, Azikiwe, and Awolowo. You remember the magic that Awolowo was able to achieve in the Western region from cocoa. And Awolowo was somebody who wrote books, was also a journalist. Zik was also a journalist. These were people who had a lot of depth. And of course, in those days, Nigeria was like any African country. The level of corruption was very little. People relied on their salary. If you're a teacher, it was noble. If you're a nurse, it was noble. You remember those nurses in their beautiful uniforms with their hats on. The matron comes more chubbier than the younger nurses and probably more starch on the uniform. And the hospital, even the iodine in the hospital, gave you hope that you will get relief. But today, you go into a hospital and there's nothing there. You remember the story of Assor Clinic, the State House Clinic, that gets a 4 billion rand allocation every year. But our former President Buhari was a regular patient, outpatient in England for many, many months. So basically, the ethical and moral leadership of Sankara and Mandela, who's the only African leader, by the way, that spent only one term in office. And I remember when President Obama said that if Mandela wanted to be president for life, who's going to beat Mandela in an election? Who will beat Mandela in an election? But now you have guys who want to be there. A case in point is Gabon, where his father ruled for 42 years, and he had ruled for about 15 years, and he still rigged the election. And then when the coup happened to remove him from power after 56 years, he said we should make some noise. We should make some noise, So the reality is this. In terms of leadership, I think Nigeria has missed the boat because I gave you an example earlier. We are not punching even below our weight. We're punching at no level because how do you explain that a country that produces millions of barrels of oil does not have a refinery? And we have to then parcel that out to a private citizen, and then the government through CBN and NNPC then invest in the private business. It should be the other way around, isn't it? But also what I find a painful story is the level of poor governance where every 4-year cycle, we spend about $500 million on an election that everybody says it's flawed. Every 4 years, the elections are flawed, rigged. We end up in the Supreme Court. And what that does, there's a high level of distrust between those who are leading and those who are following. So if you ask an ordinary Nigerian now, do they have faith in the judiciary? They'll say no. Do they have faith in the police? They'll say no. Do they have faith in our leaders? They say no. So why would such a country then be able to compete in terms of leadership? So now what we are now seeing in Africa is a smaller countries like Rwanda, Ghana, Zambia, Botswana are getting all the spotlight. These are countries that have no oil. All those countries I've mentioned have no oil. They don't have 17 million diasporas. So my sense is, yes, there are people in Nigeria that can become even bigger than Kwame Nkrumah. But the question is, how will they get the ticket in the primaries? If they say pick up a form for 100 million naira, that's just the form. What about the thousands of delegates who are waiting to cash out every 4 years that there's an election? And a lot of these guys are not interested in your manifesto. You will have to, even Nkrumah, if you remember, Nkrumah had to set up his own party because he couldn't get the ticket for the UGCC, the United Gold Coast Convention that he came in with. He was secretary of that under Dankwa, JB Dankwa. And then he had to go and set up his own party, and he won elections from prison. So there are people who are like Nkrumah. I mean, Peter Obi is an example of somebody that became a phenomena. But unfortunately for Peter Obi, they turned the election into a tribal story. So we don't really know exactly what Peter Obi could have achieved. And also because the elections were visibly flawed, it's difficult to know who got what. So I suspect that there's opportunity for moral and ethical leadership in Nigeria, but it's going to take a lot of push and pull because we in the diaspora, for example, have an advantage in the sense that we can hold our leaders accountable because many of them will be on their way to do some shopping in the US or in the UK, no matter how cold it is, because they'll be going for the sales in London and in New York and maybe what's the name of that? Bloomingdale's or something.
Bloomingdale.
And Macy's and JC Penney's and so on.
JC Penney, yeah, okay,
yes.
Yeah.
So I suspect that every country has leaders in the mold of Sankara, Mandela. Those guys don't have two heads. They didn't go to better schools. They all schooled in Africa. I mean, Mandela schooled in South Africa. Sankara schooled in his country, Burkina Faso. He changed the name from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso. Nkrumah spent 12 years outside Ghana. So his total, Nkrumah died at the age of 60-something, but 12 years of those he spent outside Ghana. And when he came back in 1947 or so, he was in Ghana for another 19 years or so till he was removed in a coup. So there are people like those guys, but it's getting harder for them to emerge because the system is more corrupt. It's now cash and carry. And even if you give the best manifesto, you find you may even get only one vote in the primaries. And that's the challenge.
That's the challenge. Very unfortunate. Very, very, very unfortunate. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm sure we have people in the mold of Sankara, Mandela, even Awolowo. My worry is that with all that Awolowo has done, especially in the Southwest, educationally, you understand, it does look like the best example of political leadership you can even see in the Southwest goes back to the Awolowo era, the UPN and the Action Group, everything.
Jakonde and so on.
Jakonde and so on, Onobanjo, I mean, Jakonde in 4 years did so much. In fact, the day the Buhari struck, he was in the office. He was still working. He was found in his office. That shows you how hardworking Jakonde was. And I tell you that our thought process is simple. That even if those people still exist, their percentage are very negligible. Because it's looking like everybody's joining the corrupt bandwagon now. You can't beat them, join them, which is apologies to Fayose for stomach infrastructure, people. And the diaspora contingent have a big edge, which is that we can be rational. There's no issue of stomach infrastructure, so which helps the thought process. Yeah, our listeners are talking to Adetuji Omotola, fantastic guy. I'm sure you're enjoying and learning a lot from him. Topic is Africa in the 21st century and how the Nigerian diaspora contingent can lead the development trajectory. And he's been doing it for some years. He's doing it right now. He's still going to do it tomorrow. He has offered us solutions already. Diasporans, we need to cohabit. We need to adapt and tolerate one another. We need to synergize. That's a word. There's no reason having all those numbers and not maximizing it. The distrust is too much. India has as much ethnic groups and religion as Nigeria, if not more. There are 1.2 billion people and they are managing it. They fight among themselves, but when it comes to India, to mother India, everybody unites. So at Atlanta Discourse, we embrace all facets of humanity to disseminate positive news in a world filled with a lot of bad news. We give a voice to the unheard always. For example, people are saying that Nigerians have the numbers, but they don't hear enough from us. That's what we do. We balance the information equation. search and discuss the facts wherever he leads. We combine the best of the human race to get the best out of mankind. We serve as a bridge between the developing and the developed world. We discuss IT, business, faith-based issues, politics. As long as it benefits mankind, we're there. But the truth remains that we do not shy away from the fact. So, Adetuji, let me put this to you. What is your general view on the last general election in Nigeria? You mentioned it while you were answering some question earlier on that the money expended was a little bit on the high side, not even a little bit, but very high, at least 400 billion. From the budget, they got about 350 something billion. The EU gave money, America gave money, so many supporters. So by the time you look at it cumulatively, it's a lot of money. So what's your general overview on the last election? What do you think African countries can do to prevent coups in the continent in the future? So I expect you to give an overview of what you think, how INEC fared in the last election. You've said a little bit about it also. You can touch on the judiciary and how we can prevent coup in the continent of Africa.
Okay. Firstly, I want to say this, Ade, to your viewers. Elections alone do not a democracy make. Elections alone do not a democracy make. The problem with us in Africa, we think that elections are a silver bullet. But surely you still need an independent judiciary, as you've seen with some of the judgments that have come out since the election in the tribunal, even people who didn't contest primaries and they're now sitting in the Senate and so on because they're big men. You know, there's no free press, if you like. Even the candidates, some of them did not subject themselves to debates or scrutiny. They had tons of spokespersons, you know. And so you ask yourself, when you conduct an election in an environment where there's no real free speech, where I remember, was it a governor, El Rufai, that somebody said something about him and he got them arrested and so on. And then you have a situation where even the elections, this one, the presidential elections, were announced at 4 in the morning, at 4 a.m., when everybody was asleep. And a fundamental requirement of the electoral law, which INEC's boss, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, had told Nigerians was that they will be uploading the results from the Beavers machine to the IRF portal, straight to the IRF portal. That never happened. So when you look at that situation, and given all the expenditure that went into the election and how very tough it was, because for the first time since I think 1979, there were three heavyweights from the three major tribes, Hausa, Fulani, Yoruba, and Igbo, Tinubu, Yoruba, Obi, Igbo, Atiku, Fulani. That has not happened since 1979, when we had Zik, Awolowo, and Shagari. And we all know what happened then. There was also a serious, anger towards the electoral result that was announced then. So what I say is the elections for me, from where I'm sitting, even I went to Nigeria to try and vote, and they said my PVC was not found. And I went on television to express my dissatisfaction because I had to travel all the way from Johannesburg, and I was staying in a hotel. And if you recall, there was no cash. There was no old notes. There was no new notes. And I don't have the facility to transfer money because you need to be technology. You need to be doing online banking to be able to do transfer. So I had no bank card. I had no cash. I had nothing. So it was very difficult. And even when I tried to change some money, I was swindled on Allen Avenue. So it was a triple whammy for me. So for me, the conditions that would make an election free and fair, where people are able to exercise their vote, their free will. If you remember, there was a lot of voter suppression, intimidation of voters, even warnings that people should not. In fact, if you wanted to go and vote in certain places, you were taking a great risk to your life. So when you look at all of those facts and how they announced the results and what happened after the results were announced, it is difficult, based on all the evidence, to say that those elections were free, fair, and credible. And it is on that basis that the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, not only were there doubts, now they put that to bed and said, okay, he won fair and square. But the reality is that what he has then done since the elections has not given people confidence. A bloated cabinet of 50 special advisors. They want to spend billions of naira buying cars for the first lady, and even the presidential yacht popped up, and they want to, spend billions on the jet. So this is the man that said renewed hope for Nigerians, hope renewed. Well, how do you renew hope with 1.5 billion naira spent on the first lady's car, and she's not even an elected official? She practically has nothing to contribute because she wasn't voted for. She's just going to be a symbolism, and maybe they'll be wearing Ashoebi and meeting at parties, as they often do around the country. So my sense is that those elections were not free and fair, and they were not credible. But of course, we can't continue to. I know in America, you guys litigate over car parks. Even if I park in the wrong place, you go to court. But in Nigeria, as I said, the judiciary are not the nicest guys. If you go there, you might not get what you're praying for. So, but going to your other part of the question, coups are themselves illegal. But when you say there mustn't be coups, as I've said on other platforms, if the African Union delegitimizes coups, but then you have people like Paul Biya, who has been president since 1982, when I was in secondary school. Then you have Obiang of Equatorial Guinea. He's been president since 1979, when he took out his uncle. And guess who's the vice president? His son, Teodoro, is the vice president. So you can see that he's already done a nice succession plan, but sadly it's his son. Now, if a coup then happens in Cameroon tomorrow, a coup happens in Equatorial Guinea, the AU will be the first to say it's illegal, we're going in, like Tinubu, President Tinubu says, no more coups. But the reality is that coups can only happen where there is abuse of process, poor governance, and where people sit tight in office, they trample on the opposition, there's no free press, and people are hungry and disillusioned. So whilst I don't support coups, I do know that there have been good coups. There have been good coups. I mean, there was a coup actually in Zimbabwe that they told us it was not a coup. The coup that removed Robert Mugabe after 37. Yeah, that's a good coup, but unfortunately, the beneficiary of the coup is the wrong person. So he's been a minister since 1980, and he was vice president. And when Mugabe sacked him, then his friends in the military, because he's a securocrat. So he's not a technocrat, but a securocrat. So the securocrats are now in power, and they've taken out the sit-tighters, the sit-tightocrats. So it's quite interesting that we don't want coups, because a military regime can never be the same as a civilian regime. They don't accept criticism. They beat people up. They jail people without due process. Everything is by decree. And the mere fact that they got there illegally is always a burden on the nation's consciousness. But so long as African leaders continue to keep their people in bondage and penury and steal elections and put their own tribesmen there, the Emilokon Awalokon syndrome, where almost everybody who's appointed, not elected, appointed outside of cabinet, is from one zone. That already tells you that there is no equity, and some people are going to be disgruntled. So it's almost like replacing Fulani hegemony with Yoruba hegemony. And these are the things that create the disgruntlement amongst folks, that even if they don't want to plan a coup, they could create a crisis, if you like. And that's where I'll stop.
Yeah, but at Atlanta Discourse, we call it Turn by Turn Nigeria Limited. Turn by Turn Nigeria Limited is our turn. It's a shame, really. But let's put this to you right now. Do you think Nigeria is a failed state, or on the verge of being a failed state? Because if you look at all the indices, all the parameters that determines what a failed state is, bad health system, failed education, failed security, inability to produce power, water, me, it does look like Nigeria tick all the boxes, and there's actually nothing that the government of Nigeria is doing for the citizenry right now. It's more or less failed. So do you think Nigeria is a failed state?
I've said this and I've said it in many platforms. Nigeria produces all the evidence that many failed states, Sudan, Afghanistan, Somalia, so many failed states, it exhibits the same thing. I mean, a country where, I just gave you an example, 30 beds in a general hospital for 2 million people with a 3 billion naira a year budget. 3 billion naira is about $1 million is now a billion. So that's about $30 million, okay? You've got $30 million for 2 million people, but you only have 30 beds in a general hospital. Okay, but when you look at schools, there's about 43 schools in Surulere. So I would imagine that for every 10 schools, there should be a hospital, but not one hospital for 43 schools. So Nigeria is a failed state. But what's saving Nigeria from being the classic failed state are these reasons. One, we've got huge revenue that comes to the fiscus, whether it's from the ports or from the oil exports or from taxation. There are big companies in Nigeria, massive companies that employ a lot of people. Also, there's a lot of loot that has been taken out of Nigeria, but people bring it back in. So one person can be feeding 500 people, okay? Then you also have the fact that diaspora remittances, which is about 83% of the budget, at least in the last 15 years, it's been growing and growing. Nigeria is celebrating the growth of remittances rather than the growth of revenue from exports. So people are cleaning trains in London and doing bus driver, taxi driver, because majority of our people in diaspora are not working in banks and they're not working at the top. The majority are working at lower levels, and they also contribute. It's almost like when you have MTN, they talk about ARPU, average rate per user. That's how they measure. They don't measure that they have 1 million lines only. They look at the ARPU. So Nigeria is exhibiting the classic signs of a failed state, where you have 95,000 students that left the country in 2016 alone. 95,000 students. How many students do we have in the country where we're spending almost $400 million on school fees abroad? That money can be building schools and roads in Nigeria and so on. But also, we still have a scenario where there's banditry, where you can't travel around the country without fear of being kidnapped or have a fatal accident because the roads are not so great. Even when you fly, you have to pray more than the pastor of a big church while you're in that aircraft because you want to land safely. Look at the rate of the naira to the dollar or even to the rand. It's an embarrassment. And we're Africa's largest economy. Look at the pump price of petrol, sitting over 600 naira, and we're an oil-producing country. When you land in Nigeria, most people cannot just land there and just go into the country. You have to be expecting somebody to fetch you at the airport because that's the only way you feel safe. Those are the things that make Nigeria look like a failed state, where you can't even reach your member of parliament. You, Ade, now, if I say, call your member of parliament by this weekend, you will struggle to reach your MP in Nigeria. In fact, it won't take your call. So what is the evidence then that the state is functional if there is no connection with the citizenry? The only time they care about us is when elections are around the corner. And that's when they go everywhere and anywhere to beg people to vote for them. We saw that with Sanwo-Olu, carrying babies and doing all sorts of things. So that's the reality. Nigeria is a failed state. It's not that it can't turn the corner, but when you look at all the problems we have, energy inefficiency, poor schools, bad roads, bad hospitals, governments that doesn't care, rigged elections, poor decisions by the judiciary, judgments that don't hold any water, that doesn't make any sense, then you have to accept that Nigeria, if you were to give Nigeria marks out of 100, I won't give Nigeria more than 30 marks. And 30 is a fail in any exam Because I think even in Nigeria, they say 40, let my people go. So I'll give Nigeria 30.
Oh God. I mean, I have to agree with you with everything. As far as we are concerned, Nigeria is a failed state. Now, for so many reasons, but I'll just pick on two. You mentioned Zimbabwe. When Mugabe was in power, we used to joke about the quality, the value of the Zimbabwean dollar. That was like the Ugandan shilling under Idi Amin was almost near toilet roll, valueless and all that. To imagine today that Zimbabwean dollar has more value than Naira, it's really sad. I mean, I was reading somewhere that the value is higher. Then when you look at all these Beninois, Togolese that come to Nigeria to work, they come because the Naira is more valuable than the CFA. Also, they come as bricklayer, carpenter, make the money go back to Lome, Cotonou, and where Abidjan convert the money. But CFA has a better value now than Naira. So just like people go to diaspora to earn dollars, imagine the dollar having lower value. So I think that's really a bad sign for me. I'm not even going to look at the health, education, and all that. We're supposed to be a behemoth in West Africa. We have lost that value. I said two, I'll make it three. The second one for me is that we're the only oil producing nation in the world that does not have a functional refinery. I think that's a major aberration. It's a lacuna that is most intolerable. People should be shot and locked up forever for that. It's not acceptable. I'm very ashamed of that. The final one is the judiciary. The way they adjudicated cases in the last election, I think it's most reprehensible. I think it's shameful. I don't know how much they gave them. I don't know what made them do it. But whatever was the reason, I hope it's worth it because it's a major disgrace. I mean, like looking at the constitution and saying these things don't exist, that don't exist, and all that. So, but then we have to keep trying, like you say, we're not going to give up. You've made very powerful cases for diaspora and all that. But we're not going to allow you go. Just one more question. You've heard of NIDO, Nigerian Diaspora Organization, and all that, started by President Obasanjo and all that. I'm a member. Like there's a lot we're trying to do in North and South America. We are called NIDOA, Nigerian Diaspora Organization of Americas. It's a lot of work. And I'm sure you agree with me that operating individually, we do exemplarily well. Yeah, but when you try to put it together, it's Igbo, it's Yoruba, it's Hausa, it's too tall, it's too short. If you are both Muslims, both Yorubas, they will say, man, it's too handsome.
You are okay, you are okay, you are Ijebu.
I mean, it's just unbelievable to imagine that these things come from educated people. But you've said it that having the requisite education does not judge your mentality. So my question is this. Do you think Nigerian Diaspora Organization as a focal point can lead the onslaught of your kind of idea? I mean, the trajectory to help Nigeria, so to say.
Okay. It's a very important question because even as we speak today, the most significant, at least in the last 30 years, organization that has been formed outside Nigeria, that is an umbrella for Nigerians, is still NIDO. The problem is this. The guys who, and that sometimes people say, oh, continuity is good, continuity is not so great. I think that the focus of government from the time of Obasanjo, where there was an emphasis on getting foreign investors in and getting diaspora back, has changed completely now. Government now, whilst they appreciate the remittances and so on, they're not looking at the structure to keep us together, more unified. I wrote an article towards the unity of Nigerians in South Africa. There's a NIDO in South Africa, but for the last 10 years, it has been defunct. So if NIDO in South Africa is defunct, is that a problem for NIDO as a whole, or is just a problem for NIDO in South Africa? Because if you've got a car with 4 wheels and an exhaust, and your exhaust falls off while you're driving, do you carry on driving the car without going to pick up your exhaust? So the way I see it also, NIDO is affected in the same way and manner that other organizations that may not be as big and intercontinental as NIDO, but they're still Nigerian organizations that are umbrella bodies that have come up after NIDO. So in South Africa, we have 2. In the UK, there's KANUK. Here we have NUSA, Nigerian Union South Africa, NUSA, which was formed just a few months after NIDO, because they said NIDO was too elitist, professors and doctors and so on. Then there's NICASA. NICASA is Nigerian Citizens Association of South Africa. NICASA was formed because those guys complained that NUSA did not have the informal sector. So they set up NICASA. No, sorry. No, those ones complained about elitism. No, NICASA was formed when NUSA had a problem with the former consul general. The guy went on channels to give a scathing attack on the missions. Then they formed a parallel body called NICASA. So NICASA has been in place for about 5-6 years, but they just had an election on September 9, and 9 out of their 12 executives come from the Southeast. So people are saying NICASA is an Igbo organization. So some Yoruba say they will never have anything to do with NICASA. They must go and bring Nido back, because also they've seen that the person who is the president of, they've seen that the person who is the president of NUSA is not a Yoruba person, and they're still angry about how they removed the Yoruba man in NUSA and set up NICASA. So what I'm trying to say is that, and I wrote it in that article, it is very difficult for people who are from diverse backgrounds. Some people studied in Ibadan, some people studied in Birinkebi, some people studied in Nnewi. Some people went to school, King's College, some people went to Ahmadiyya. We come from very different backgrounds. But
I went to Victor Grammar School.
Yeah, so what probably unites us are the things like our food, maybe our history, similar cultures, the fact that we carry the same passport, maybe we can all speak Pidgin. But so long as our leaders at home continue to divide the citizens in order for them to grab power and fail to deliver, there is no organization abroad, no matter how big, that will be able to succeed unless we begin to fix things back at home, and it will trickle down to organizations outside. They say charity begins at home. If no governor is interested out of the 36 in talking to us in a calendar month, if no senator is interested in talking to us in a calendar month, if no minister is interested in talking to us in diaspora in a calendar month, if the chairman of NIDCOM, the madam herself, is the chairman and the CEO of NIDCOM, and there's no board, there's no oversight, it's going to be difficult for us to be able to push to the level that we want and to be relevant. And I think that whilst NIDO, because I know Dr. Is it Obashe Kola, NIDO Europe, I know people like Collins Nweke, Kenneth Bandi, and so on. The reality is that those organizations also, they don't have resources. I read somewhere that the most liquid organization in the US has about $200,000. Now that's probably the salary of one individual in the US. So if you have an organization that doesn't have resources, let's say a Nigerian wants to run for office as mayor of Atlanta, which structure are the Nigerians in Atlanta going to use to support him to get the mayorship? And I see that a lot in the UK, where people are running for office, they say Nigerians don't support them. There's Oyinbos that are supporting them. And you will expect it to be the reverse. They'll come with story. You are not ready. You're not prepared enough.
It's not funny, but I don't have to laugh.
So if the Nigerians
more than their brothers, yeah.
The Oyinbos are supporting Nigerians far more than Nigerians are supporting them. So
that's why I'm saying that even the Nigerians, they would rather support the Oyinbo man than their brothers, than their Nigerian
absolutely.
brothers.
In fact, in Ireland, yes, the lady who's the councillor in Ireland said the same thing. The Nigerians don't want to support their own person. And guess what? It's also with the media. This Atlanta discussion we have now reminds me of something I did in the past. So people want to watch CNN, Aman Paul, right? They want to watch Aman Paul and all these people on CNN and BBC. But Atlanta discussions, they will say, who is Adebalogun? We don't know him. Or they will say the program is too long. It shouldn't be more than 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yes, that they don't have enough data. So our people are not serious about working together. But I think NIDO We must commend them. It's very difficult to run an organization abroad with no resources. All these are voluntary organizations. I think what NIDO can do straight away is NIDO should begin to say every year they're going to do an event online, because we don't need to do stuff physically, where they're going to bring Nigerians, even if they're not members of NIDO, to showcase what NIDO is doing, what they're achieving, no matter how small. And they should bring those Nigerians from all over the world, because the fact that NIDO has NIDO America, NIDO UK, NIDO South Africa, and people are still saying they want NIDO to come back, means that NIDO, in fact, let me tell you what NIDO did in 2013. And I think that was their last hurrah. Then they disappeared completely, because some of them also, because they're professionals, they get seconded, they go to AU, like Professor Nemelia went to AU, Amechi Chukura is in Atlanta, is the one doing the suya pepe in Atlanta. He's selling pepper now. He's a lawyer, but he's doing very well in Atlanta. He's married to a Zimbabwean, he's my brother. We were called to law. Yeah, we were called to bar on the same day in 2001. So what I'm saying is that NIDO, the event in 2013, I'm sure you would have heard of the yellow fever saga. In 2012, 155 Nigerians were deported on the same flight back to Nigeria because of allegedly they were carrying fake yellow fever cards. And of course, I remember the story. Yes, and one senator was amongst those that were deported. So of course, you know, Niger, all hell broke loose. And then there was a diplomatic row. Nigeria deported 55 South Africans. So the fallout, anyway, South Africa apologized through Ibrahim, the Deputy Minister for International Relations. Then NIDO organized a major event. They brought Thabo Mbeki, Olusegun Obasanjo, Mango Sutu Buthelezi, the minister, late Ambassador Gbenga Ashiru, popped in for about half an hour and they left. And then the Consul General at the time, Oke Muche, was also on seat. He's now the Secretary of Ohaneze Ndigbo now. And then the pro tem chairman, Wilfred Godaro, who is in his 70s now, he was on the high table. That was the height of success of Nigerians organizing an event in this country. I've never seen any event organized by Nigeria where Obasanjo and Mbeki and Buthelezi, these are stalwarts. These are legends of African politics and leadership. So I think NIDO, and incidentally, that same year that NIDO did that event was the same year that the all Nigerian nationals in diaspora came into being. And that was the same year that I set up the Guild of Nigerian Professionals. And that was the same year on Oktoberfest that I had an event with the South African Nigeria Chamber of Commerce on Oktoberfest when Nigeria was 53. So I think 2013, if we x-ray it, I don't know for you guys which year that you say NIDO did amazing things, but for us, 2013 was NIDO's highest level of success, because even the NIDO president then, Ken Ayere, when there's a state visit, he's the one that, because he's a media guy, is the one that does the MC moderation on stage with President Jonathan. So NIDO was actually pumping very high. But all of a sudden, as I said, some people left, some people, and they didn't open it up. And then the thing is totally dead now. It's like talking about UPN of our Lord. UPN.
Well,
it's South Africa. It's South Africa.
Yeah, we're not doing too badly. We're not where we're supposed to be. That's NIDOA, Nigerian Diaspora Organization America. We're not where we're supposed to be. We're taking giant strides. We just elected new officials across in Brazil, USA, and Canada. We have a new BOT in place. So we have some people pretending to be a faction, yes, but the issues there, we're all brothers who always, I'm sure, with patriotism at the back of everybody's mind, who all, you understand, we're all Nigerians at the end of the day, you know. I think the first thing is that we should forget about occupying positions and walking the talk, not just being chairman, president. Some people get this portfolio, they don't really know what to do with it, actually. They don't really know what to do. I think that's a problem. And I also think we should start putting square pegs in square holes, yeah. And I think the third most important thing there is that we should stop recycling the same set of people to be in the same place, yeah. you try new things. I was telling somebody in my church yesterday that if we have new members, let's listen more to the new members. New members see what we don't see. You understand? They might not even have the experience we have, but new people, they see the loopholes. Just the way Indians come to Nigeria and make more money than Nigerians. Just the way Nigerians come to America and make more money than you see. So we should try new people, new things.
New blood is good. New blood is good.
New blood is good. Yeah, there's
fresh blood.
Fresh blood, and the error rate, the elder statement will guide them and all that. So, because right now I'm no more a young person myself, so I can imagine, and my generation can also say we've never really had the opportunity to do all those things too. So we're already thinking those in the 40s, late 40s, mid 40s, late 30s should run things also. So. But I'll say this, Adetunji, you have been a fantastic guest, and you're going to be coming back again, I can assure you. We have taken more time than usual because what you're saying really applies, and our viewers, I'm sure, are really enjoyed it and like it. So this Atlantic Discuss, it's a wrap there. We're going to end it there. Tunji, thanks for coming. Yeah,
thank you for having me.
We'll bring you back again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, I guess. Expect something better, something good, something that applies.
We pray for Nido, but you guys you are big, so you don't need prayer. You just need more money, and then you deploy it to Africa.
I agree. I was only trying to be in Nigeria. You can't be in Nigeria and not add prayer to it. All right, Bias. Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you for having me. All the best. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye.